The stars stretched endlessly before the ESS Endurance as it glided through space, its sleek hull gleaming under distant suns. Captain Jae-woo Kim felt his heart race as he watched the massive crystalline structure of the Galactic Council headquarters grow larger on the main view screen. The structure looked like an enormous snowflake carved from diamond, its spires reaching out into the void. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Lieutenant Park whispered from her station, her eyes wide with wonder. "To think we're the first humans to see this up close." Captain Kim nodded but kept his expression neutral. 20 years of military service had taught him that beauty often hid danger. The Endurance was Earth's most advanced ship, but he knew they were like children playing with toys compared to the Council's technology. Ambassador Una Park stood beside him, her diplomatic uniform crisp and perfect. Her hands were clasped behind her back, but Kim noticed how she kept adjusting her grip, the only sign of her nervousness. They had trained for this moment for months, yet nothing could truly prepare them for humanity's first official contact with the Galactic Council. "Council Control is hailing us," Communications Officer Lee announced, his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. "Put them through," Kim ordered, straightening his back. A holographic screen materialized, showing an alien with silvery skin and multiple eye stalks. "ESS Endurance, follow the guided path to Docking Bay 7. Any deviation will be considered hostile action." "Understood, Control." Proceeding as directed. Kim gestured to his helmsman, who carefully guided their ship along the glowing path that appeared before them. As they approached the massive structure, more details became visible. Hundreds of ships from different species moved in careful patterns around the station. Some were clearly military vessels, their weapons ports visible even at this distance. Others appeared to be diplomatic craft like the Endurance, though none matched its simple, practical Earth design. Ambassador Park took a deep breath. "Remember, everyone, we represent not just Earth, but all of humanity. Let's show them our best." The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon they were walking through gleaming corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their escort, a tall insectoid being, led them without speaking. Kim noticed how other aliens they passed would stop and stare, some with curiosity, others with what looked like disgust. The council chamber itself was enormous, with curved walls rising hundreds of meters overhead. Rings of seats held representatives from what must have been hundreds of species. The human delegation seemed tiny in comparison as they took their assigned place on the speaking floor. High Counselor Rax, a being that appeared to be made of shifting shadows and light, rose from the central podium. Its voice echoed through the chamber without seeming to come from anywhere specific. "So these are the humans who have achieved faster than light travel. How unexpected." Ambassador Park stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. "The people of Earth are honored to." "Your species is primitive," Rax interrupted, darkness swirling through its form. "Submit to our authority, and we may find use for your kind." A murmur of amusement rippled through the chamber. Kim felt his jaw tighten, but maintained his neutral expression. Ambassador Park didn't flinch, but her hand moved to her datapad. "Perhaps," she said calmly, "before discussing authority, we should review some information we've gathered." She activated her pad, and holographic displays appeared around them. The images showed planets stripped of resources, species working in mines and factories under armed guards, children of various races in chains. With each image, the amusement in the chamber died a little more. "These records," Park continued, "seem to show a pattern of exploitation. We're curious about the Council's explanation." Rax's form darkened. "You dare question?" "We dare much more than question." Park's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "Humanity has a long history of opposing tyranny. We had hoped to find friends among the stars. Instead, we find slavers hiding behind fancy words." Kim watched the other representatives closely, noting how some seemed to shrink back while others grew agitated. His hand moved slightly closer to his concealed weapon. Una's fingers tightened on her datapad as more evidence scrolled past. Statistical data showing death rates in labor camps, economic reports revealing systematic plunder of protected worlds, and recorded testimonies from escaped slaves. She exchanged a glance with Captain Kim, seeing her own cold anger reflected in his eyes. "You overstep, human." Rax's voice had lost its smoothness, becoming harsh and grating. "You will learn your place, or what?" Park asked quietly. "You'll do to us what you've done to others. Add Earth to your collection of broken worlds." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I suggest you review Earth's history very carefully before making threats. We're very good at surviving them." The chamber erupted in shouts and protests, but Kim noticed something interesting. Fear, real fear in the eyes of the council members. They had expected Earth to bow down, to be grateful for attention from their betters. Instead, they had found humans who looked at their empire of corruption and felt not awe, but disgust. As the chaos grew, Kim stepped closer to Ambassador Park. "I think," he said quietly, "we've made quite a first impression." "Good," she replied, her voice equally low. They needed to understand something about humanity. She looked up at the angry faces above them. "We don't submit to bullies. We break them." 3 days after the first contact, Defense Minister Jai-Ho Lee stood in the same chamber where Ambassador Park had exposed the Council's true nature. The room felt colder now, the crystalline walls seeming to pulse with barely contained hostility. He straightened his military uniform and faced the assembled alien representatives without fear. "You dare refuse our generous offer?" High Counselor Rax's form rippled with dark energy. "Perhaps we overestimated your species' intelligence." Lee allowed himself a small smile. "Actually, we believe you have underestimated us. Please, allow me to share some information about humanity's history." He activated the holographic display he had prepared. The chamber filled with images of Earth's past conflicts, starting with ancient battles and moving forward in time. Armies clashing with swords and shields, the mechanized horror of World War I, the devastating power of nuclear weapons, and finally, the precise strikes of modern warfare. For thousands of years, Lee spoke clearly as the images played. Humans have fought each other. We've developed countless ways to wage war, and with each conflict, we've learned, evolved, improved. He paused, noting how several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "We fought ourselves for millennia. We know war intimately. Do not force us to show you how well we've learned its lessons." A counselor with metallic scales stood up. "Are you threatening the Galactic Council?" "Not threatening," Lee corrected. "Warning. There's a difference. A threat is what you did to us. Submit or else. A warning is what we're doing now, letting you know the consequences of your choices." The display changed to show Earth's current military capabilities. Advanced starships, weapon systems that the Council had thought impossible for such a primitive species, and defense technologies that made several representatives gasp. "Impossible," one alien whispered. "They shouldn't have this level of advancement." "And yet we do," Lee continued. "While you were busy oppressing others, humanity was pushing boundaries. Innovation comes naturally to us, as does resistance to tyranny." High Counselor Rax's voice boomed through the chamber. "Enough. You will submit, or we will show you the true meaning of power." Lee watched calmly as chaos erupted in the chamber. Some representatives were calling for immediate military action, while others seemed hesitant, clearly unnerved by the display of human warfare. "Very well," he said quietly, but his voice carried through the noise. "You've made your choice. Remember that we tried diplomacy first." As Lee left the chamber, his aide whispered, "Sir, they're already moving their fleets. Intelligence suggests they'll attempt to blockade Earth." "Good," Lee replied. "Everything is proceeding as expected." Within hours, Council ships began positioning themselves around Earth's solar system. Their massive vessels formed an impressive barrier, designed to cut off all travel and commerce. The Council expected Earth to quickly surrender once isolated. What they didn't see were the small, stealthy ships slipping through their blockade. These vessels, using technology that the Council had dismissed as theoretically impossible, carried Earth's finest engineers and military tacticians. Their destinations were hidden shipyards scattered across the sector, established in secret during the years humanity had been watching the Council. On one such ship, engineer Soo-Jin Park reviewed the final calculations for their new weapon systems. "They think they've trapped us," she said to her colleague. "They don't understand that humans are at their most dangerous when cornered." Back on Earth, Defense Minister Lee stood in the underground command center, watching real-time updates from their covered operations. The Council's blockade ships filled the main screen, their positions marked in red. "They're so focused on showing their strength," he mused, "they forgot to look for our preparation." A young officer approached with a report. "Sir, all stealth teams have successfully breached the blockade. Production facilities are ready to begin operations." Lee nodded. "Send the message to all outposts. Operation Phoenix is now active. Let's show the Council why they should have taken our warning seriously." In space, the Council ships maintained their impressive formation, their crews confident in their superior technology and numbers. None of them noticed the small, dark shapes moving through the gaps in their blockade, carrying the seeds of their eventual defeat. On the Council station, High Counselor Rax received reports of Earth's apparent isolation with satisfaction. "See how quickly they fall when faced with real power," it told its advisors. One advisor, older and wiser than most, looked troubled. "Sir, something about their warning bothers me." They seemed too calm. "Primitive bravado." Rax dismissed the concern. "They will learn their place, just like all the others." But in hidden bases across the sector, humanity was already preparing its response. Engineers worked tirelessly on advanced weapons, tactical officers planned elaborate strategies, and diplomats secretly contacted other species who had suffered under Council rule. The Council had chosen to ignore humanity's warning. Soon, they would learn just how costly that mistake would be. As Defense Minister Lee had told them, humans knew war intimately, and they were about to demonstrate just how well they had learned its lessons. Commander Sun Ma Choi watched the slave world of Proxima III grow larger on her view screen. The planet's surface was scarred by massive mining operations, its once beautiful continents now pockmarked with industrial complexes. Her hands tightened on the command chair as she thought of the millions suffering below. "All ships report ready, Commander," Lieutenant Tai announced from his station. "Stealth systems are functioning perfectly. The Council's defense grid hasn't detected us." Choi nodded, her expression grim. Her strike force consisted of 5 experimental vessels, each equipped with technology that the Council had declared theoretically impossible. The ships were practically invisible to conventional sensors, their hulls absorbing or deflecting all known detection methods. "Remember, everyone," she spoke to her crew and the other ships. "Timing is crucial. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we show these slavers what humanity can do." The Council's orbital defenses around Proxima II were impressive. Automated weapon platforms, patrol ships, and scanning arrays, all useless against ships they couldn't detect. Choi's fleet slipped between them like ghosts. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Target data locked." Choi took a deep breath. "Send the signal to the resistance cells planetside. Tell them it's time." The first indication the Council forces had of an attack was when their primary defense station erupted in silent flame. Choi's ships had positioned themselves at key points around the orbital network, their new weapons cutting through supposedly impenetrable shields like paper. "Defense Station 1 destroyed," Tactical reported, moving to secondary targets. Council ships scrambled to respond, but they were firing at shadows. The human vessels danced between their shots, their return fire precise and devastating. Within minutes, the orbital defense network was in chaos. "Commander," Lieutenant Ta called out, Council reinforcements jumping in from the outer system. "Right on schedule," Choi smiled. "Deploy the mines." As the Council ships emerged from hyperspace, They found themselves in the middle of a field of cloaked explosive devices. The resulting chain reaction turned space itself into a weapon. The synchronized explosions creating a shockwave that crippled the entire reinforcement fleet. "Channel open to all frequencies," Choi ordered. Her voice rang out across space and to the planet below. "People of Proxima II, this is Commander Sun Le Choi of the Earth Liberation Fleet. We bring freedom. The chains that have bound you are about to break." On the planet's surface, years of careful planning came to fruition. Slave workers, secretly armed and trained by human operatives, rose up against their overseers. Security systems mysteriously failed, communication networks went dark, and prison gates opened. "Sir," Tactical reported with satisfaction, "resistance forces have taken control of primary industrial centers in sectors 7 through 12. Council ground forces are in disarray." Choi watched as similar reports came in from across the planet. The Council had never expected their slaves to fight back, had never imagined that humanity would reach out to help them. That arrogance was now costing them dearly. Incoming transmission from the planetary governor. Communications announced. The governor's face appeared on screen, his alien features twisted with rage and fear. You dare attack a council world. The consequences, Choi interrupted calmly, are already happening. Look around you, Governor. Your power is broken. Your slaves are free. And this is just the beginning. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Status of the other operations. Reports coming in from the Beta Centauri and Sirius sectors, Tay replied. Similar success. The Council's grip on their slave worlds is breaking. Choi allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. 3 major systems hit simultaneously, each attack perfectly coordinated. The Council's comfortable certainty about their power was cracking, just as planned. "Commander," Tactical called out urgently, detecting multiple emergency transmissions from the Council capital. They're panicking." "Good," Choi said softly. "They should be. Send word to Earth Command. Phase 1 complete. We're ready for Phase 2. As her ships secured the Proxima system, Choi thought about the Council's dismissal of humanity as primitive. They had never understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their relentless drive to fight oppression, their willingness to help others fight for freedom. Below on Proxima II, former slaves were throwing off their chains, assisted by human special forces who had been hiding among them for months. Similar scenes played out across 3 star systems as humanity revealed its true strength, not just in ships and weapons, but in the hope they brought to those who had lost it. The Council's comfortable certainty wasn't just cracking, it was shattering. And Commander Sun Le Choi's strike force was just the beginning of their nightmare. Deep within the hollowed-out heart of Asteroid Base Delta, Admiral Hyun Ki-song stood at the center of what would become history. The vast chamber, carved from solid rock and reinforced with advanced materials, hummed with energy and anticipation. Representatives from a dozen liberated worlds filled the space, their diverse forms a testament to the Council's former reach. "My people spent 3 generations in the mines." A tall, crystalline being spoke, its voice resonating with emotion. "We had forgotten what it meant to stand proud. Earth reminded us." Admiral Song nodded solemnly. The being was from Proxima II, one of the first worlds they'd freed. Looking around the chamber, he saw similar stories written on every face. Former slaves who now stood tall, their newfound dignity shining in their eyes. "The Meridian Collective pledges its support to the Freedom Coalition," another representative announced, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with determination. "Our shipyards are yours." One by one, they came forward. Each species brought different strengths. Advanced biotechnology, mineral-rich worlds, unique tactical insights learned from centuries of resistance. Together, they were becoming something the Council had never expected, a united force. "Admiral," his aide whispered urgently, "Council ships are approaching the outer markers. They're broadcasting diplomatic codes." Song allowed himself a small smile. Right on schedule. How many? 3 vessels. Their weapons are powered down. And the aide paused, checking readings. They're flying white flags. Actually flying them. Sir, physical flags in space. A murmur ran through the chamber as the news spread. The Council, which had once demanded humanity's submission, was now adopting human symbols of peace. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Let them dock, Song ordered, but maintain security protocols. The Council has proven creative with their treachery before. The Council delegation that entered the chamber was a far cry from the arrogant beings who had dismissed humanity months ago. Their grand robes couldn't hide their nervous movements, their eyes darting around as they took in the united front of their former slaves. High Representative Cole, their leader, stepped forward. Admiral Song, we come seeking dialogue. You mean you come begging? One of the freed representatives called out. Now that your empire crumbles. Song raised a hand for silence. Speak, Representative, but choose your words carefully. Our patience with Council deception is limited. We propose an immediate cessation of hostilities, Cole said quickly. Return to previous boundaries, with adjustments for autonomous regions. No, Song's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. You misunderstand your position. This is not a negotiation between equals. This is your chance to surrender with dignity. He activated a holographic display, showing the current state of the conflict. Red dots marked Council worlds that had fallen, blue ones showed liberated systems, and white indicated Earth's growing fleet movements. Your empire is finished, Song continued. Earth's shipyards are producing vessels faster than you can destroy them. Your slave worlds rise against you. Your own people begin to question your rule. Cole's composure cracked. But surely we can reach an accommodation. The Council has stood for 10,000 years. And in less than 1 Earth year, we've shown how corrupt that rule was. Song stepped closer to the Council delegation. Here are our terms. Dismantle your empire, or we will do it for you. The chamber fell silent as the words hung in the air. The Council representatives looked at each other, their fear now plainly visible. You would destroy 10 millennia of order? Cole asked weakly. A representative from one of the freed worlds laughed bitterly. Order? Is that what you call enslavement? Song watched the exchange calmly. We're not destroying order. We're establishing justice. Your empire falls either way. The only choice you have is how many more lives will be lost before it does. The Council delegation huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. Around them, the representatives of the Freedom Coalition stood proud, their unity a stark contrast to the Council's fear. We must consult with the full Council, Cole finally said. You have 48 hours, Song replied. After that, we continue our advance. And remember, we're no longer primitive beings you can deceive. We're humanity, and we keep our promises. As the Council delegation hurried away, Admiral Song turned to the assembled coalition members. Prepare your forces. Either way, the next phase begins soon. The chamber erupted in determined activity. Former slaves worked alongside human officers, planning the next stages of their campaign. The Council's comfortable world was ending, replaced by something new. A coalition built on freedom rather than fear. In his private office later, Song reviewed the latest fleet deployments. Earth's ships, now joined by vessels from their allies, formed an increasingly powerful force. The Council's defeat was inevitable. The only question was whether they would accept it gracefully or force humanity to teach them one final devastating lesson. The neutral conference station hung in space like a jewel, its pristine white surfaces meant to represent hope for peace. Captain Min Seo Kang stood quietly behind Ambassador Park, her enhanced senses scanning the room constantly. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't place what. The station had been chosen as neutral ground for the final peace talks between Earth, the Freedom Coalition, and the Galactic Council. Representatives from all sides filled the grand chamber, their voices a mix of different languages and tones. Ambassador Park was in the middle of her opening statement when Kang noticed it, a slight shimmer in the air near the ceiling. Her combat augments, hidden beneath her formal diplomatic uniform, sent warning signals through her nervous system. As we gather here today, Park was saying when Kang's enhanced reflexes took over. She moved before her conscious mind could process why, tackling the ambassador as energy beams cut through the space where she had been standing. The chamber erupted in screams and chaos as hidden figures materialized from stealth fields. Assassins, someone shouted. The council representatives were already scrambling for the exits, their faces showing either genuine shock or well-practiced surprise. Kang's augmented muscles responded instantly. She pushed Ambassador Park behind a pillar and spun to face the attackers. Her ceremonial dress tore as hidden combat systems activated, hardening into armor. The first assassin reached their position, wielding an energy blade. He clearly didn't expect a human diplomat's guard to be augmented. Kang moved faster than any natural human could, catching the blade between her hardened palms and shattering it. Security breach. She shouted into her comm while engaging a second attacker. Multiple hostiles, using Council stealth tech. Around the chamber, other Earth security personnel revealed their own augments, moving to protect the Coalition representatives. The assassins had expected easy targets. Instead, they found themselves facing enhanced human warriors. Kang's fist connected with an assassin's faceplate, her augmented strength cracking the material. She spun, using the momentum to throw another attacker over her shoulder. Her combat systems identified weak points in their armor, guiding her strikes with mechanical precision. Ambassador secure, came a report through her comm. Evacuating now. Understood, Kang replied, her voice steady despite the combat. 3 assassins lay at her feet already. A 4th tried to flee, but her enhanced speed let her catch him easily. The fight was over in minutes. Earth's security forces stood victorious, the failed assassins either dead or captured. The council representatives who hadn't fled were being detained for questioning. Kang stood among the bodies of the attackers, her diplomatic attire in tatters, but her combat systems still humming with ready energy. The council's true nature was laid bare for all to see. They had never intended to make peace. Captain, her comm crackled. Word from Earth Command. Operation Thunderstrike is authorized. All units are to proceed immediately. A grim smile crossed Kang's face. The council thought they could kill their way out of defeat. Instead, they had just triggered humanity's ultimate response. Understood, Command, she replied. Beginning immediate deployment. Around the station, hidden Earth ships dropped their stealth fields. The council representatives still present watched in horror as vessel after vessel appeared. Far more than anyone had suspected were there. You fools, Kang said to the detained council members. Did you think we wouldn't be prepared? That we wouldn't have a plan if you tried something like this? One of the captured council representatives spoke up, his voice shaking. You don't understand what you're doing. The council's power is broken. Kang interrupted. You just proved you never intended peace. Now you'll face the consequences. Throughout Coalition space, hidden fleets were emerging from stealth. Operation Thunderstrike, planned meticulously as a response to exactly this kind of treachery, was beginning. Ambassador Park, safely aboard an Earth vessel, broadcast a message to all Coalition forces. The Council has chosen war over peace, treachery over honor. Humanity offered them mercy. Now they will face our fury. Kang watched through the station's windows as more ships dropped their stealth fields. The Council had thought they were being clever, planning to assassinate the Coalition's leadership. Instead, they had walked right into humanity's trap. All security teams, she broadcast, execute contingency protocols. The Council wanted to see humanity's true strength. She paused, looking at the fallen assassins. Let's show them what that means. Across the sector, Earth's response began. Operation Thunderstrike would show the galaxy why humans had tried to warn the Council about pushing them too far. The time for diplomacy was over. Now came the reckoning. The Council's desperation had led them to attempt assassination. Humanity's response would change the galaxy forever. As Captain Kang led her team off the station, she knew the next few days would be written about in history books for centuries to come. The massive fleet hung in the darkness of space, thousands of ships arranged in perfect formation. At its center, aboard the flagship Retribution, General Han-Ja Park watched the holographic display of the Council's core worlds. His revolutionary combat AI system, HFY, projected attack vectors in glowing lines across the map. Enemy fleet movements suggest they've concentrated their forces around the capital, his tactical officer reported. They've activated all their defensive systems. Park nodded, studying the patterns. The Council had gathered everything they had left: their most advanced ships, their strongest weapons, their best commanders. They protected their crown jewel, the heart of their empire, with defenses they believed unbreakable. "Launch the swarms," Park ordered quietly. Across the fleet, launch bays opened. Millions of tiny ships, each barely larger than a fighter, poured into space. Everyone was controlled by an AI node, linked to HFY's central network. They moved like schools of fish, flowing through space in patterns too complex for organic minds to predict. Council ships responding, Tactical announced. They're launching interceptors. Park watched as the Council's defenders engaged the swarms. Their tactics were traditional, predictable, exactly what he had expected. The swarms split and reformed, drawing enemy ships into carefully planned kill zones where Park's main fleet waited. Phase 1 complete, HFY's artificial voice reported. Enemy fleet distribution matches predicted patterns. Initiating Phase 2. The real attack began. While the swarms kept the Council's attention, Earth's heavy ships jumped in from seemingly impossible vectors. The Council had thought their sensor network could detect any approaching vessel. They were wrong. Multiple direct hits on primary defense stations. Tactical called out. Their shields are failing. Park's innovations had changed space combat forever. The combination of AI-driven swarm tactics and traditional fleet elements created chaos that no defender could effectively counter. The Council's mighty defenses, built over thousands of years, were falling in hours. General. Communications interrupted. Transmission from the Council chamber. High Counselor Rax's face appeared on the main screen, its usual arrogance replaced by fear. General Park, please. Your forces have made their point. We request immediate cessation off. No, Park cut him off. You had your chance for peace. You chose assassination instead. The battle continued. Earth's ships pressed their advantage, the swarms finding every weakness in the Council's defenses. Stations exploded, ships fell, and the impregnable heart of an empire cracked open. Enemy fleet is retreating from the capital, Tactical reported with satisfaction. Their command structure is breaking down. Park turned to his command staff. Begin landing operations. I want boots on the ground within the hour. Earth's Marines, equipped with powered armor that made the Council's best weapons look like toys, began their assault on the capital itself. The Council's ground forces fought bravely but hopelessly, facing an enemy that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. In the Council chamber, High Counselor Rax watched in horror as human forces breached the final defenses. The doors blew inward, and armored figures strode through the smoke. Please, Rax begged, all pretense of superiority gone. Show mercy. The response came from every human commander in unison, their voices linking through their combat networks. Like the mercy you showed others. Park walked into the chamber personally, his armor marking him as the supreme commander. Around him, Council members were being detained, their long reign of tyranny finally ending. Your empire is finished, Park announced to the assembled prisoners. Your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are broken. Your reign of oppression is over. Rax, once the most powerful being in the galaxy, could only watch as human soldiers secured the chamber. What will you do with us? Justice. Park replied simply. Real justice, not the false order you imposed on others. You'll face trial for your crimes, with representatives from every world you enslaved sitting in judgment. Outside the chamber, the fighting was ending across the capital. The Council's forces, seeing their leaders captured, were surrendering in masses. Earth's victory was total and complete. General, his aide approached. Reports from all sectors confirm it. The Council's military forces have surrendered or been destroyed. The core worlds are under coalition control. Park nodded, looking around the grand chamber that had housed so much corruption. Send word to Earth and all coalition worlds. The war is over. The Council has fallen. The news spread across the galaxy like a wave of hope. On countless worlds, former slaves celebrated their final liberation. The Council's empire, built on 10,000 years of oppression, had been shattered in less than a year by humanity's fury. As Park stood in the conquered council chamber, he thought about how it had all started, with the Council's sneering dismissal of humanity as primitive. They had never understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers, but their unwavering determination to fight tyranny wherever they found it. The reckoning was complete. Now came the harder task, building something better from the ashes of empire. The morning light streamed through the crystalline walls of the reformed council chamber, now renamed the Hall of Unity. Supreme Justice Yun-Ji Cho sat at the center of the tribunal bench, her expression serene but determined as she reviewed the evidence against another former council member. The court has heard testimony from the survivors of Proxima II. She spoke, her voice carrying through the hushed chamber. We have seen the records of systematic oppression, the calculated cruelty, the generations of suffering. The defendant, once a high-ranking council official, stood in the transparent containment field. Gone were the grand robes and arrogant bearing. Now they wore simple prison garments, facing justice for their crimes. You claimed you were merely following orders. Cho continued. This tribunal finds that explanation insufficient. Each being must answer for their own choices. The trials had been ongoing for months. Unlike the Council's swift and brutal judgments, these proceedings were careful, thorough, and fair. Every accused had the right to defend themselves, to present evidence, to face their accusers openly. This court sentences you to rehabilitation and restitution, Cho announced. You will work to rebuild the worlds you helped destroy, under the supervision of those you once oppressed. As the defendant was led away, Cho called for a recess. In her private chambers, she reviewed the next cases. The tribunal's work was far from over, but already the galaxy was changing. Justice was replacing vengeance. Healing was overtaking hurt. In another part of the complex, Ambassador Yuna Park walked through the rebuilt council chamber, now transformed into the heart of the Galactic Assembly. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the seats. Former slaves now stood as equals, their voices carrying the same weight as any others. Amazing, isn't it? A crystalline being asked her. A year ago, my people couldn't even look up at the sky. Now we helped shape its future. Park smiled, remembering her first encounter with the old council in this very room. This is what we fought for, she replied. Not to destroy, but to build something better.